The shirt hit the Anfield turf in the 83rd minute. 50,000 voices fell silent. By the time the final whistle blew, the cameras had captured everything. By Monday morning, the back pages screamed betrayal. By Tuesday, the manager demanded a private meeting. But it started with 6 words shouted from the touchline that no one else was supposed to hear. You'll never be rushy. Stop pretending. Don't forget to subscribe to EliteBall Legends and like the video for your support. Thank you for subscribing. Robbie Fowler had been at Liverpool for 8 years, and he had always known what it meant to wear the red shirt. He'd scored on his debut. He'd become the Cop's new hero. He'd earned the nickname God, not through arrogance, but through 28 goals in his first full season. Through tap-ins and thunderbolts, through penalties buried with ice in his veins, and celebrations that felt like communion with 50,000 believers. But by December 2001, everything had changed. The night was cold, the kind of cold that made breath visible under Anfield's floodlights, the kind that turned sweat into steam rising from players' shoulders. Liverpool was hosting Aston Villa in a Premier League match that should have felt routine, mid-table opposition, home advantage, 3 points expected. But nothing felt routine anymore. Gérard Houllier had returned to the dugout just weeks earlier after his emergency heart surgery, and the atmosphere around Melwood had shifted. The manager who had once promised Fowler he'd build the team around him now watched with different eyes, tactical eyes that saw formations and systems rather than history and sentiment. Fowler had started the match on the bench, again. The 4th consecutive league game where he'd watched from the sidelines while Emile Heskey and Michael Owen ran the channels, stretched defenses, scored the goals that should have been his. He'd sat there in his tracksuit, hands clasped between his knees, watching the clock tick toward the hour mark, knowing his moment would come, but hating that it had to be given rather than earned through starting. The Cop had chanted his name anyway. Robbie Fowler, they sang, the sound rolling across the pitch like a wave demanding his return. The manager had heard it. Everyone had heard it. But Houlier's tactical board showed no sentiment, only numbers and arrows and pressing triggers. In the 67th minute, Liverpool was winning 2-1, but looking vulnerable. Villa's midfield was dominating possession, pushing Liverpool's defense deeper, exposing spaces that shouldn't have existed at Anfield. Houllier turned toward the bench, eyes scanning his options, and Fowler felt his chest tighten. This was it. This was his chance to remind everyone who he was. Robbie, warm up. He stripped off his tracksuit and began running along the touchline, feeling the eyes of the Cop on his back, hearing the roar build as they realized he was coming. On. His legs felt heavy from sitting, but his mind was sharp, calculating. One chance. That's all he needed. One ball in the box, one moment of chaos, one opportunity to show Houllier that systems and formations meant nothing when you had instinct. He came on in the 71st minute, replacing Danny Murphy in a tactical adjustment that made little sense to anyone watching. Murphy had been solid, controlling tempo, linking play. But Fowler was the substitute, and the Cop exploded with approval. For 12 minutes, he ran. He pressed. He dropped deep to collect the ball, tried to thread passes that didn't exist, made runs into channels that no one recognized. The system didn't fit him, he didn't fit the system, and everyone could see it. In the 82nd minute, Villa equalized. A corner kick, a scramble. Sami Hypia caught ball watching, and suddenly it was 2-2. Anfield groaned. Fowler stood in the center circle, hands on his hips, chest heaving, feeling the weight of it. Not just the goal conceded, but the entire situation. 8 years of bleeding red, of scoring goals that made grown men weep, of being told he was the future, and now he was a tactical afterthought. A substitute brought on to chase shadows in a system that had no room for what he did best. He glanced toward the touchline. Houllier was screaming instructions, arms waving, face red. Fowler couldn't hear the exact words over the crowd noise, but he saw the manager's expression, saw the frustration directed at everyone and no one, saw the tactical rigidity that had replaced the warmth he'd once known. And then he heard it. Patrice Berguez, the assistant manager, standing just behind Houllier, turning to Sammy Lee and saying it loud enough that the 4th official heard, loud enough that the camera crew caught the moment, loud enough that Fowler, 20 yards away, heard every syllable. You'll never be rushy. Stop pretending. The words hit like a punch to the chest. Ian Rush, the legend. The man whose record Fowler had chased his entire career. The standard by which every Liverpool striker was measured. And here was the coaching staff, in the 83rd minute of a match that was slipping away, using Rush's name not as inspiration, but as weapon, as dismissal, as confirmation that Fowler would never be enough. Something inside him broke. He reached down and grabbed the hem of his red Liverpool shirt, the number 9, the shirt Rush had worn, the shirt Hunt had worn before him, the shirt that meant everything to the Kop, to the city, to the history they all carried like scripture. And in one motion, he pulled it over his head. The crowd noise changed. Confusion first, then shock, then a sound that had no name, part gasp, part roar, part collective heartbreak. Fowler stood there in his white undershirt, the red jersey crumpled in his right hand, looking toward the touchline where Houllier and Bergos stood frozen in disbelief. He didn't throw the shirt. He didn't spike it into the ground or hurl it toward the dugout. He simply held it, arm extended, as if offering it back, as if saying, "If this isn't mine anymore, then take it. If I'll never be Rushy, then why am I wearing his number?" Jamie Carragher was the first to reach him. "Robbie, what are you doing? Put it back on, mate." His voice was urgent but not angry, confused but loyal. Other players were running over, Gerrard, Hipia, Heskey, forming a circle around Fowler as if to shield him from the cameras, from the crowd, from himself. "I heard him," Fowler said quietly, still holding the shirt. "I heard what he said." "Who said what?" Carragher asked, though his eyes had already flicked toward the touchline, toward Berju, toward the truth everyone could guess. "Doesn't matter." Fowler pulled the shirt back over his head, tucking it into his shorts with mechanical precision. "It's done." The referee showed him a yellow card for removing his shirt. Standard protocol. But the booking was the least of Fowler's concerns. He could see Houlier's face, purple with rage. He could see the fourth official relaying information to the dugout. He could see the press box erupting with activity, journalists frantically typing, photographers zooming in on his face to capture whatever emotion they could sell as tomorrow's headline. Liverpool held on for the 2-2 draw, but the result felt irrelevant. When the final whistle blew, Fowler walked straight down the tunnel without acknowledging the Kop, without waving to the fans who had chanted his name, without the ritual he'd performed hundreds of times. He went directly to the dressing room, sat in front of his locker, and stared at the floor. The other players filtered in gradually, moving quietly, unsure how to navigate the tension. No one spoke to Fowler directly. Even Owen, his strike partner for years, gave him space, sensing that this moment required silence. Houllier entered 15 minutes later. The room, already quiet, became suffocating. The manager stood in the center of the dressing room, hands on his hips, scanning the faces around him before his gaze settled on Fowler. "My office, now." Fowler stood without a word and followed Houllier down the corridor to the manager's office, a space he'd been in hundreds of times for tactical discussions, for contract negotiations, for the kind of conversations that built careers. Now it felt like walking toward an execution. Houllier closed the door and turned to face him. For a long moment, neither man spoke. The manager's face was controlled now, the fury from the touchline replaced by something colder, more calculating. "What was that?" Houllier finally asked, his French accent thickening with suppressed emotion. "I took my shirt off," Fowler replied evenly. "Don't play games with me, Robbie. You know exactly what I'm asking." Fowler met his gaze. "Your assistant said I'd never be Rushy, said I should stop pretending. So, I figured if I'm not good enough to wear the shirt, maybe I shouldn't wear it." Hollier's expression shifted slightly, surprise perhaps that Fowler had heard. Patrice was frustrated. The team was... "I don't care about his frustration," Fowler interrupted, his voice rising. "I've scored 120 goals for this club. I've bled for this shirt. I've loved this club since I was a boy watching from the Kop. And your staff is on the touchline saying, 'I'm not Rushy.' Like, I don't already know that. Like, I haven't spent my entire career being compared to him. Like, I haven't earned the right to be judged on my own merit." "You have earned that right," Houllier said quietly. "But football has changed, Robbie. The game demands different things now. Systems, pressing, movement off the ball. It's not about goals? Fowler's laugh was bitter. That's what you're going to tell me? That goals don't matter anymore? Goals matter when they fit the system, Houllier replied, his tone hardening. And right now, you don't fit. The words hung in the air like poison. Fowler felt something inside him crack further, some belief he'd held about loyalty and history, and what it meant to be a Liverpool player. He'd thought that 8 years of service, of goals, of bleeding red would mean something more than tactical flexibility. Then sell me, Fowler said quietly. Because I can't do this anymore. I can't sit on the bench watching while you build something that doesn't include me. I can't hear your staff say, I'm not good enough, and then pretend everything's fine. I can't be the legend the fans want and the tactical problem you need to solve. So, if I don't fit, let me go. Houllier studied him for a long moment. I'm not selling you, Robbie. You're too valuable. But you need to understand. Things are different now. I nearly died on that pitch 4 months ago. When I came back, I saw this team with new eyes. We're building something here, something that can win championships, but it requires everyone to sacrifice ego for the collective. This isn't about ego, Fowler shot back. This is about respect, about not being told I'll never measure up to legends when I've scored more goals than anyone else my age in Europe, about being trusted to do what I've always done, score goals when it matters. You'll get your chances, Houllier said, but they'll come when the tactical situation allows it. Not because the cop chants your name, not because of what you did 3 years ago. Football is about the present, Robbie, and in the present, I need players who fit the system. Fowler felt exhausted suddenly, drained of the anger that had fueled him through the conversation. What happens now? You train, you play when I select you, you apologize to the team for the distraction, and we move forward. And if I don't fit the system? Hollier's expression softened slightly, and for a moment, Fowler saw something like regret in his eyes. Then we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But I hope it doesn't come to that, Robbie. I really do. The meeting ended without resolution, without reconciliation, without the clarity either man needed. Fowler returned to his car in the players' parking lot and sat behind the wheel for 20 minutes before starting the engine, staring at the floodlights of Anfield glowing against the December sky. The media firestorm began immediately. By morning, every newspaper in England had run the photo, Fowler holding his shirt, Carragher rushing toward him, the confusion etched on 50,000 faces. The headlines ranged from sympathetic, Fowler's cry for help, to damning, disgrace at Anfield. Pundits debated whether he disrespected the shirt or defended his dignity. Former players weighed in, split between those who understood and those who condemned. But at Melwood, the conversations were quieter, more complicated. Teammates approached Fowler carefully, unsure how to navigate loyalty to a friend and loyalty to a manager. Owen told him privately that he understood. Gerrard, just 21 and still finding his voice, asked if Fowler was okay. Carragher, ever practical, said simply, "Don't let them break you, mate." Training resumed 2 days later. Fowler reported on time, worked through drills with professional focus, said little. Houllier watched from a distance, making notes, adjusting tactics, treating Fowler like any other squad player. The media waited for another explosion, another moment of drama, but it never came. What came instead was something quieter, a slow dissolution of what had been. Fowler continued to train, continued to play when selected, continued to wear the number 9. But something fundamental had changed. The relationship between player and club had shifted from love to transaction, from destiny to convenience. In the weeks that followed, whispers emerged about other clubs showing interest. Leeds United, Manchester City, teams that would build around him, that would give him what Liverpool no longer could: centrality, trust, the belief that goals mattered more than systems. The cop never stopped chanting his name. Even as his playing time dwindled, even as the goals became rarer, even as the tactical evolution of Hollier's Liverpool left less and less room for what Fowler did best, the fans remained loyal, because they understood something the coaching staff didn't, that football was more than tactics, more than systems, more than pressing triggers and defensive shapes. It was about connection, about history, about players who embodied everything the club meant to the city that loved it. The shirt removal became legend, not because it was dramatic or rebellious, but because it was honest. Fowler hadn't thrown a tantrum or demanded a transfer in public. He'd simply made visible what everyone already knew, that he no longer fit the vision of what Liverpool was becoming. And in doing so, he'd forced a conversation about loyalty, about legacy, about what happened when the game evolved past the players who had defined it. By the summer, Fowler would be gone, sold to Leeds for $11 million, a fraction of his true value, but the price of tactical inconvenience. His farewell letter to the fans would be raw and heartfelt, thanking them for making him feel like God when he was just a boy from Toxteth who loved scoring goals. But on that December night, standing in the Anfield dressing room, with his red shirt on and his heart broken, Robbie Fowler learned the cruelest lesson of elite football: that love isn't always enough, that history doesn't guarantee a future, and that sometimes the shirt you die wearing doesn't want you back. And the 6 words that had started it all, "You'll never be rushy, stop pretending," would echo in his mind long after the final whistle of his Liverpool career, a reminder that even legends can be told they're not enough.